Hello YouTube! I've got another relatively quick and relaxing Star Wars build. It's at least relaxing if you consider the fact that there's no photo etch or aftermarket resin parts which require surgery on the plastic. I don't have to break out my needle nose, needle point tweezers. About the most time-consuming effort was masking and painting on so many of the markings rather than using all the decals. As with all these Bandai kits, they're well engineered, nicely detailed, and snapped together with no glue required. I still add glue here and there on some parts because it's not like I'm ever going to take the thing apart again. In fact, some of the pieces fit so snug that you'll probably end up damaging them if you ever try to disassemble the thing. In hindsight, it would have been much easier to paint some of these parts first before I snapped them together, particularly this orange stripe. I was just so excited to get the X-Wing framed up that I didn't plan it too well and put most of the pieces together in the beginning, hence I used a lot of masking tape later on. I'm using Mr. Color Leveling Thinner 400 in about a 50-50 ratio with the Tamiya paint. The airbrush is a Badger Sotar 2020 with a 0.2mm nozzle, and I'm spraying somewhere in the range of 15 to 20 psi, maybe call it 18. My air compressor and dial aren't all that precise. The base white color helps the orange show through much brighter. Without it, the color would look dark and muted. Trust me, I tried it. I used the decal to help measure and set the tape in place for the stripes. It helps get you close to where you need to be, but I still needed to slightly adjust the tape once it was on the plastic. I used Aqua Gloss clear coat before adding the decals. There weren't many to add since I painted on most of the markings. And now I'll show you how to go from this to this with the weathering process. I used oil paint and mineral spirits to create a sludge that I sparsely applied with an old beat up paintbrush. The black and brown make a sepia color, which you can either buy the specific color or mix it like I'm showing here. I start out with some streaking and fading to help dirty up the pristine orange color. The brush and cotton swab are both dry, and you can see that the paint mixture moves quite well without overloading the whole thing with more and more mineral spirits or thinner. The bristles on this blue brush are worn and crooked, but that helps make the random chipping patterns. Also, my hand is not naturally that shaky. I'm intentionally moving it up and down rather quickly to help create the random pattern with the tiny specks. As I repeat the process for the opposite side, you'll see I try to cluster the chips around the panel lines and the leading edges, which would see the most damage. Whenever I didn't like the pattern or I made a mistake, I just wiped it all away with the cotton swab and started over. This section right here is a good example of not quite liking the result, wiping it away, and then just completely starting over. I did it a few times on this piece. In order to show wear and tear on the black parts, I used a gray mix and dry brushed it on the edges and raised surfaces. I also apply it to the panels to add some highlighting. Unlike the weathering on the orange sections, I added no mineral spirits or thinners to this mix. Can't forget about the canopy. It would be hard to explain how the wings are dirty, but the canopy is clean. So this is that same sepia mix that I used on the orange sections on the wings. The decals on the helmet require the use of Microsol. You must soften the decal so it conforms to this curved surface, and it did take a lot of finagling to get it just right. BB-8 was the same concept, but a bit easier than the helmet since the curvature wasn't as severe, but 1/72nd scale BB-8 units are tiny, as you'll see when I compare it to the coins in the photos coming up.